goodness, welcome to another video of the Daily Dose of NCLEX. Today we have a special topic. I mean, not so special, but we're going to talk about tube feeding or gastric gavage, all right? NG feeding, gastrostomy feeding, whatever the case might be, it's the same concept, all right? So before we move on, I'm going to flip the board, I'm going to show you the question, and after that, I'm going to tell you the steps of NG feeding or gastric gavage, all right? If you don't know me, my name is Mo. On the internet, I'm known as Alpha Slice. I've helped thousands of students pass their NCLEX on the very next attempt. And because you're just watching this video, I want to give you my ebook for free. This is Real NCLEX World versus NCLEX textbooks. We've got thousands of students who went to the test center. After they get out of the test center, they text me or one of the coaches and they say, "Hey Mo, those are the topics that I got on my test." And then what did we do? We put those topics, we took screenshots and we put them in one ebook. And I want to give you this ebook for free. So you can look the topics that are currently being discussed on the NCLEX, which is amazing, it's mind-blowing. It will save you the trip of, oh, what are they going to ask me? What are they going to ask me? This way, you will have an idea of what are the topics that are being asked, and then you can research them and prepare yourself, all right? Now, let's flip the board and talk or read the question, all right? I've got new markers today. If you see that the font is different, I got bigger markers, but I'm not sure if I like the font. All right, let's read the question. Which observation by the nurse requires intervention during the care of student nurse to a patient with continuous NG feeding? All right, if you know me, every time we read the question, we read it 3 times. Because the first time I read the question, I didn't understand what it's saying, right? Now the second time, I'm gonna have in-depth reading, and then I'm gonna look for keywords. And the third time, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna rephrase the question in my own words and visualize myself in that situation so that I understand what the examiner is saying, all right? Now, you might tell me, "Hey Mo, but what about time, dude? I can't read that question 3 times and then read the options and critique them, and that will take me like 3, 4, 5 minutes." If you haven't watched my video about how the NCLEX is graded, of course you're gonna be worried about time because time is not your enemy, only wrong answers are, right? So I would encourage you to watch that video, how the NCLEX is graded, because it will change your whole perception of how you sit for any test. Not any test, but the NCLEX, because time is not important, all right? So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna read the question for the second time. Which observation by the nurse requires intervention during the care of a student nurse to a patient with continuous NG feeding, all right? So what I understand is you've got a nurse, which is the RN, for example, right? And then you've got a student nurse, right? So student nurse is a keyword because now I understand that I'm dealing with a trainee, right? Now, which observation requires intervention? So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for an intervention during the care of a student nurse to a patient with continuous NG feeding. I mean, NG feeding is the main topic. It could be a keyword, but that is the main topic of the question, all right? But the main thing is, I've got a trainee, and then she's doing something wrong. So what intervention during the care of the student nurse to the patient requires intervention? So okay, now I highlight keywords. Now if I want to rephrase the question in my own words, this is what I would do, dude. I've been a nurse for 15 years, so I've preceptored tons and tons of nursing students and new graduates, right? So in my head, I'm gonna close my eyes and I'm gonna visualize myself. I'm in a patient room, and then that patient has an NG tube, right? And then she wants to feed the patient, or she wants to give medication, or whatever the case might be, right? So what observation is that student nurse doing, he or she, right? Is that student nurse doing that's gonna alert me, is gonna say, "Oh, I've got to intervene," all right? Now, I rephrase the question, I'm gonna move on and read the options. We read the options one option at a time, right? So, we're gonna read the options. Option number 1, before giving the next feeding, the student aspirates fluid or gastric content to check for proper placement. Is this a true statement or not? Those type of questions, this is how I treat them. Is this a true statement or not, right? Because what I'm looking for a false statement or incorrect statement or incorrect behavior, right? So is this a correct behavior? So before giving the next feeding, the student aspirates to check for proper placement. I mean, to me, this is a good practice, because before you give the next dose of feeding, right, of the meal for the patient in the NG or gastrostomy, you've got to check placement. What if the tube is not in place, and then you're given feeding up in the, I'm gonna pronounce this properly, esophagus, or maybe the patient, maybe the tube is right here, and then patient is aspirating, right? So what I want you to do, or maybe it's like further down in the small intestine, the duodenum, right? So of course I've got to check for placement, right? So you're gonna aspirate gastric content and you're gonna put it on a pH strip and you're gonna check the acidity of the gastric content, right? Another way, if the pH strips, which is the #1 choice if you had an NCLEX question of how to check for, placement of the NG tube. Now a lot of people do aspiration, right? So they do like they call it a septosyringe, but they put a septosyringe in the NG tube and then they blow air and listen on the stomach and see if they can hear any bubbling, all right? So this looks correct. I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm not gonna intervene. I'm gonna let the student nurse do what she's doing, right? Option #2, student gives 2 medication at a time and flushes properly with warm water. All right, so she's given 2 drugs at the same time, right? She crushes 2 drugs, boom, put them in the NG tube, and she is pushing them, right? Is this a good practice? It happens in real life, but now here we're not teaching real life. This is the NCLEX. So of course not. That is not proper, because that will increase the risk for the NG tube to be clogged or for the gastrostomy tube to be clogged, and that will cause a lot of problems, right? So definitely not. Even if you check the interaction between those 2 drugs and they do not have any interactivity, right? Now in real life, yes, but on the NCLEX, no. 1 medication at a time, and after every drug, you flush 15 to 30 mLs of warm water, all right? So definitely this looks like the right option, right? This is a wrong statement, so I'm looking for wrong statements, so definitely this is the right option, but I'm gonna read the other 2. Maybe there's something, let me pronounce this right, catastrophic, right? So option #3, maintain the patient in high Fowler position at all times. So high Fowler position is the right position for NG feeding. A lot of people will say, hey Mo, but when I go to a hospital, I'm doing my clinicals, and I see they put patients in semi-Fowler position, like in 30 degrees, right? Okay. They might. Now a good practice, and on the NCLEX, it's high Fowlers, which is 60 degrees to 90 degrees. And imagine this, dude. If you're sitting to eat a meal, do you sit like that and eat the meal? Of course, nowadays, a lot of people on the iPads and they're sleeping on their phone, they're popping popcorn and no, right? So you sit up straight, you sit 90 degrees and you eat your meal. That's how you put your patients, 60 to 90 degrees, and you feed them the NG feeding, all right? So definitely high Fowler position. Option #4, before giving the next feeding, the student checks and measures the gastric residue, right? So they are measuring the gastric residue, which is definitely a good practice. What do you want to do before every feeding? What if the previous feeding is still sitting in their stomach, right? And then you're feeding them more, and then, right? So of course you've got to check residue in the stomach. So if you're giving feedings every 4 hours, before you give the next feeding, you're gonna check for residue, gastric residue, and you're gonna pull them and see how much residue you've got. So if you've got 50 mLs, you're gonna put them back. So you chart down that there's 50 mLs residue, and you're gonna put them back. Even if it's 100 mLs, you're gonna put them back. 200 mLs, you're gonna put them back. Because if you throw them away, what's gonna happen, you're gonna cause severe electrolyte imbalance, all right? So anytime you aspirate to check for residue, that residue, even if it might look disgusting for you, but it's not disgusting for the body. You've gotta put it back because you don't want a patient to have any electrolyte imbalance, right? Now, this is the key. If the patient has less than 100 mLs, now you can go ahead and give the next feeding, right? So if you checked residue and there's 50 mLs, then you go ahead and give the next feeding, right? Now if the patient has more than 100 mLs, you gotta put them back, but you're gonna withhold the feeding and call the physician, because we've gotta figure out why the patient is not digesting, the food, all right? So that when it comes to gastric residue, definitely this is a good practice. So the only wrong statement or the wrong option is option #2. This is the right answer. And now let me take you through a few steps when it comes to how do you give NG feeding or Gastric Gavage, all right? Step number one, of course, you're gonna assess the patient before you administer any type of feeding, all right? NG feeding, gastrostomy feeding, gotta assess the patient. So I've gotta assess their abdomen. So I get my stethoscope, I'm gonna assess the 4 quadrants if I've got bowel sounds and make sure that peristaltic movement is on point, all right? Now after that, I've gotta put the patient in high follower position, right? Now I've gotta put a towel on their chest. Then I've got to assess for placement. Of course, I've got to assess if the NG tube is in place. The way to assess for proper placement is pH strip, right? I've got to aspirate some residue, put it on the pH strip, and make sure that it is acidic, all right? Now after that, of course, if you don't have pH strips, the second option is to use your stethoscope, a septic syringe, and then blow some air into the stomach, and then you hear some bubbling, right? If you hear some bubbling, then boom, it's in. Now, the third step is to check for residue, all right? I'm gonna aspirate all the gastric content, and I'm gonna make sure that the residue in the stomach is not more than 100 mLs, right? If it's more than 100 mLs, I'm gonna withhold the feeding and call the provider. If it's less than 100 mLs, I'm gonna put them back. I mean, whatever the case might be, above 100 mLs or below 100 mLs, I'm gonna put them back, and then if it's below 100 mLs, I'm gonna give the feeding, right? Now, the way you administer the feeding is you use an aseptic syringe or a big syringe or a funnel or whatever your institution uses for equipment, right? So you're gonna put that funnel into the tube, and then you're gonna hold it like that. You're gonna pour the meal or the NG feeding or whatever you're given, right? And then the tube should be like that, in a U shape. It should be not kinked, but it should be in a U shape, right? You don't want to have it in a straight line where the flow is going so fast by gravity. You want it in a U shape, right? And you're holding it like that. If you want the feeding to go faster, you just raise your hand up. If you want the feeding or the flow of the feeding to go slower, then you lower your hand, all right? Listen, when I started my nursing career in one of the hospitals overseas, I used to see practical nurses, which is like UAPs. They used to give NG feeding, and this is how they used to give it, like a 50 ml syringe, and they used to put it in the NG tube, and they used to push the feeding because they want to finish. Like, we're working in an ICU, you've got 20, 21 patients, and then boom, boom. So they give like 400 mLs to the patient so fast because, you know, they want to, you know, finish the work. But what happens is if you give the feeding super fast, the patient is gonna have diarrhea, all right, or vomiting. But in most cases they have diarrhea. So you give them from here, 2 seconds, the patient is like, you know, code brown, all right, code brown. All right, now after you finish the feeding, you are going to flush with water, all right? So warm water, 30 to 60 mLs, and then you're gonna clamp the tube, and you're gonna put like a wrap or tape or a gauze around it, make it look nice. You're gonna coil it and tuck it in on the dressing, or like they have like abdominal slings or whatever the case might be. So just make it nice because you're gonna use it again. You're gonna use it over and over every 4 hours. So don't throw it everywhere or anywhere on the bed, all right? So please, best practices are the best practices, if you know what I'm saying, all right? Now, you gotta put the patient, when they are high Fowler, 60 degrees to 90 degrees, you're gonna put them at 30 degrees for at least an hour after the feeding, all right? Because you don't want any regurgitation or aspiration. All right, especially if the patient is comatose, right? If they are, you know, glaucoma scale below 8. All right, so that is it when it comes to NG feeding. If you have any comments, please put them below. Like, share this with your friends. I mean, if you enjoy the Daily Dose of NCLEX, share it with your friends. And again, before you leave, I want to give you the opportunity to get another book of mine. It's called the 300 Spartan Medication eBooklet. What happens with this book? You know, our students, when they go to the test center after they get out, they text us the drugs that they got on the real NCLEX, the medication calculation questions. So me and Professor Aileen Burke, if you don't know Professor Aileen Burke, you've got to Google her. She's a member of our team, and she's the #1 nationwide well-known NCLEX copywriter. She worked for all those companies, NCSBN, you know, Kaplan, UWorld, La Charity, Lippincott, and she's on our team right now. She is the one who built our QBank, but forget about that. We actually researched those 300 drugs. We put them in one book, and we actually categorized it as per families. We've got the medication, the indication, side effects, and patient teaching, which is all you need to know for your NCLEX. This is so valuable. Click the link in the description box and get it. It's gonna change your life forever. All right, share this video with your friends. Share it on your Facebook. Share it on Instagram and tag me at AlphaSlice at NCLEX QBank. Love your face. Can't wait to see you on the next video.
Hello everyone, my name is Tara, and I would like to say that I am an alpha slicer. I am now a registered nurse. Yay! I am so excited. But I will say the journey was not easy. I struggled with this exam like nobody's business. I struggled. I graduated from nursing school December 2016, and I've taken my exam multiple times. I was embarrassed to say that I have taken my exam 10 times. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to call. Everyone, all my classmates were passing the exam, and I'm like, man, God, what about me? What about me? I was a great student, a student in nursing school, and I could not understand why I struggled so hard with passing this exam. But I will say, to God be the glory. He sent me Mo. I was scrolling down YouTube, and I was like, I don't know what I can do to pass this exam. I was scrolling on YouTube, and there it was, Mo promoting his Alpha Slice program. And I said, I cannot spend any more money on yet another review. So I prayed about it, talked to my husband about it. We already spent like $3,000 plus on the actual exam. And to spend more money for another review, my God, it was worth it. It was worth it. So I want to just say thank you, Mo. Thank you, Joe, Sally, and the professor. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for giving me the courage and the strength to not give up, because I almost gave up. Actually, I did give up, and I said I was not going to test again. But on the 11th try in 2022, during COVID, actually my family had COVID. That was the best news that I could have gotten, that I passed my exam. And it's the best birthday gift I could receive, because it's my birthday. So thank you guys. Thank you guys. I want to encourage you all, do not give up, no matter how long it takes. I'm not a traditional student. I have a family. I have children. I have a lot going on, like everyone else, jobs, everything going on. But do not give up, no matter how long it takes you. I'm hitting a milestone birthday, so I'm not a spring chicken. But I am so thankful that I passed. I am a registered nurse. Thank you.